Hello. One of my friends was asking me if I was still continuing with my solo play of Napoleon's Last Gamble by OSG with the set of home rules that I was trying to develop, and the answer was yes. And I actually wanted just to capture where I'd got to in the playthrough before the gameplay moved on too much, because I've got into the middle of the 3 days. What was it? It's 4 p.m. on the 17th of June. So we've had the fighting on the 16th has been finished. Ligny and Quatre Bras were resolved as engagements. There was a general retreat ordered by the Allied forces, which allowed them to move during the night of the 16th. You do a tally of the victory point position at the 9 p.m. turn of each day, and the French had a substantial but not overwhelming victory point tally. They'd basically come out on top. At Ligny, Quatre Bras was fairly even. What swung it really for the French were the number of demoralised divisions on the Anglo-Allied forces side. There was one demoralised Prussian corps, but because the Anglo-Allies are based on a divisional structure, you still score victory points for being able to demoralise those, and that there are more of them. And as a result of the fighting, they were able to rack up a few points. The French also had more than the Allied forces in terms of victory point locations on the map. So actually it's a pretty historical outcome. So in the night of the 16th, the Prussians have tried to get away. The Allies falling back on Mont Saint-Jean. They're being met by further troops coming down the main Brussels highway, and additional forces coming from Nivelles in the west, which had march orders to move towards Mont Saint-Jean. Very interesting. I'm quite happy with the way the game's playing out. I was going to have a quick tally just to give you some idea of the losses. So basically the VP total was French 40 and the Allies were on 20. The French controlled Jumièncourt, Ligny and Saint-Amand. The Allies still had Quatre Bras and Marbais and Saint-Bref. Losses were very even. The French in total had lost 47 strength points, the Allies 17 and the Prussians 29. And the second Dutch division was demoralised, as was the British 5th and the Prussian 2nd Corps. So that's how the VPs were tallied up. I will take some footage in a minute of where the map is at the moment, but suffice to say that Grouchy has taken the Gérard's 4th Corps and Labal's 6th Corps in pursuit of the Prussian rearguard, supported by Pujol and it's Exelmans. There's 3 heavy corps, Milhaud, Kellerman and Exelman, and Pujol has got generally lighter cavalry. That's another one of the distinctions that it doesn't really make in the original game. that there's no real difference between the heavy cavalry and light cavalry. So there is now a slight modification to the Marcus Stumpner rules that I was using, whereby the heavies beat the lights on ties. So if you're charging, your charge can be negated by a counter charge, and if the counter charge ties the losses, that has the effect of being able to neutralise the charge. The little twist here is that the heavies win ties over lights. So Grouchy's pushing on the Prussian rear guard. They've just engaged the Prussian Second Corps. The Prussian First Corps were able to rally some troops, so they're now no longer demoralised. The Fourth Corps is just entering the map, making its way across to Mont Saint-Jean. And on the other side, the Allies have fallen back in fairly good order. They're being chased by Rye's Second Corps and Delon, who's done nothing but really march for the entire game. And Napoleon is bringing up the Guard Corps and Van Damme's Third Corps. I've really quite enjoyed it. I mean, the rules haven't really changed much from the outset. There was a very interesting engagement at the rear guard of the Prussian Second Corps, where I think it was Exelmann's cavalry corps got their chit. I'm using the chit pull system, so you pick a chit out, and that was the Exelmann's cavalry corps. Now they've got two cavalry brigades and some horse artillery. They were within charge range of the rear of the Prussian Second Corps, and if you have artillery as well as cavalry, it leaves the defender in a bit of a dilemma, because he doesn't know whether he's going to be trying to form square, which is bad for being shot at with artillery, but obviously good if you're being charged by cavalry. And there was an interesting choice to be made there, and in the end they decided to give themselves the option to form square. So the artillery was more effective. They managed to disorganise the Prussians. The French cavalry charged. There was a potential counter-charge by some Prussian cavalry, which would need to pass a morale check to do so, but it was only a light cavalry unit, so they declined the option, discretion being the better part of valour. And the cavalry hit the Prussian infantry, causing damage to the first unit. They can then pursue. Then you get the option to possibly countercharge, and there's a rule called the backhand blow, where you are at an advantage if you are conducting a reaction charge against cavalry which is pursuing after their initial engagement. So that gave them an opportunity to try and support the 2nd Infantry unit in the hex. And the whole interplay and interaction of the squares, the reaction charges, the sort of threat of the artillery, do I try and form a square or not, that to me is the essence of a Napoleonic system. You know, it should feel like if you've got the benefit of the combined arms, that should be a tangible feel for the game, and I was quite pleased with how that whole particular engagement evolved, and some of the choices I was faced with. Even playing solitaire, I was had to think for a while as to what might be the best way to try and play it out. So quite pleased with that. I'm still going to keep pushing on with it. I'd like to get into the 18th. I'd like to get a final tally of the VPs. In case anybody is wondering, the rules I'm using, I mentioned before, developed Marcus Stumpner, and I'm very grateful for him for publishing those on Consim World. But the rules I put together, I was trying to insert his combat rules into the OSG system, so keeping most of it unchanged. And I found swapping between the two rule books a bit awkward, so in the end I've done my own rule book, which I don't know in terms of a copyright where I stand. So I'm a bit reluctant to make it available to people, because if anyone's watching from OSG, they might say, it's fine, because it might encourage a few more sales of our games. But I don't know. I've taken some of their images from their rule book and pasted it into mine and chopped things around. So clearly, some of that work belongs to them, and I'm just using it to try and get a single coherent set of rules. So I don't think at the moment I'm comfortable with just putting a link to this video to say, here's my effort, unless I'm sort of told that it's safe to do so. Anyway, I'll take a little bit of footage of the map. Okay, so that's Quatre Bras, you can see there, the intersection of the two main highways, and this is the French forces making their way up the main road. You can see Van Damme's corps, there's Napoleon, you've got Milhaud's heavy cavalry corps just to the right, and at the vanguard there you've got there's Kellerman and the French 2nd and 1st Corps just standing off from the southern tip of the Anglo-Allied army, which is, I think it's essentially the British 1st Division, some of Uxbridge's cavalry. I think the 2nd Division has just turned up with the 3rd Dutch Belgian. So there may be a little bit of engagement there on the as the evening draws in on the 17th, but there's still a tail of stuff catching up. Basically, after the general retreat, the Allies retreated right up to the top of the map, where the Prince of Orange was it stretched his organisation abilities to try and get them sorted out, to get them back down the road again. Some did move on their own initiative, but that's where we are on the western side. And coming across here, you can see the Labal's French 6th Corps with the French 4th Corps de Gerard, who's managed to rally some of his troops that were destroyed or disorganised at Ligny. The charge marker is Exelmans' troops, who I've just mentioned in the earlier bit about how they engaged the rear of the Prussians, and you can see the disorganised unit which managed to get away, but that's actually reduced, and the other one was destroyed by the cavalry charge. So it was quite an effective action. Prussian 1st Corps just coming a bit to their aid, and there's Grouchy with the Prussian 3rd Corps, and he's obviously, if he goes across to join the Allies, that'll leave no overall commander, so these two corps will have to rely on their own initiative of the officers to react to what the French do. And at the top there you can just see the vanguard of the Prussian 4th Corps entering the map, which will be working its way across to support the Allies. So it's good stuff, quite enjoying it, and hopefully I'll do one more update towards the end of the game.